We are looking like we are live. Do you see us live upstairs, Mart? Okay, jolly good. So welcome to TeaFlix Tuesdays. This, what is it, November the 22nd? 2020, 11/22/22. So
That's
today we are very excited. We've got a new friend and client who is, we've got so many mutual friends, it's not even funny.
I know.
I feel like I've known Ross about 1,000 years. And so without further ado, Grammy-winning producer and recently nominated, and the crowd goes wild.
And if anybody can name drop, it's drum roll, please.
Ross
Hogarth. Hello.
Hello.
Good morning, Ross.
Good morning to you two.
Thank you for finding time out of your busy schedule, I should say, to talk to us.
Absolutely.
And we know you've got so many stories to tell and so many that you can't. So come on down.
And I want you to know that we coordinated the wardrobe in steel and teal, your new brand colors, your new website colors.
I love that. That's so thoughtful of you guys. It's great.
Well, we usually say to each other on Monday nights, what should we wear tomorrow that might be appropriate for whoever our guests are, you know.
Right.
So
today it was an easy choice because the new rosshogarth.com and hoaxproductions.com, happily and proudly built by yours truly. And when you go there, you will.
Great job, I must say, at that. It's so nice to have a website that works, that looks good, and you did a terrific job.
That's nice to hear.
Yeah, and we had fun doing it too.
Well, that's half the battle, isn't it? Yeah. If it's not a chore, if it's a pleasant task.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So, oh my gosh, the recent Brother Johnny project, which you'll tell us about how long that took and whatever. Congratulations on the Grammy nom. That's fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, there's no amount of awards or nominations or anything that will make one feel better about themselves if you don't, but it sure feels good when you get one. So it's
I'm sure.
It's a really and it's a great acknowledgement for Edgar, who I love Edgar. I consider him a very dear friend at this point, he and Monique, and to be able to call him last week and wake him up, because Edgar loves getting up about the crack of 1 PM, and to be able to say, hey, we got this nomination, and have him go, what? Really? So, and it was a long journey. So it feels good.
That's nice. That was like the day that you woke. John Lennon was staying at our house in Liverpool, and they hit, I don't know, several things on the charts.
I can't remember. It's so long ago. But there was a day when Brian Epstein called and spoke to us, and he said, will you wake John up and Paul? They were like the crack of 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It was rising. I can't remember exactly what the news was, but they had so many hits, and they'd hit the Melody Maker and so on.
Yeah.
But
I think they had simultaneous number ones in the US and the UK or something.
Yeah.
And John was more concerned about trying to find his glasses.
His glasses, yeah. Because he didn't want to step out of bed and step on his glasses, which he'd done so often.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, I want to interview you guys, because you're the one with, both of you are the ones.
Well, we've got some we can tell, and some we can't, like you.
That's right.
Yeah.
So how long have you known Edgar, and how did you come to cast this record? Because there are an amazing amount of luminaries on it, right?
Yeah, Edgar and I have, I mixed his last record, which was well over 10 years ago. And at that point in time, it was an interesting process because he wasn't particularly happy with it, and I kind of came in and gained his trust, and in the end, I think the result was really sweet and good, and he was really happy with it, and we bonded deeply. And he said some, it's amazing when someone actually says really nice things after you finish a project, because the money is already spent. It's spent before we even get it, basically. We don't do this. I don't do this for the money. I mean, if I wanted to do it for the money, I should do something completely, something else, because I think in some ways all of us making, records are somewhat overqualified on some level. And we do it because we love it. So anyway, he called me in 2018. And obviously when Johnny died, we were, obviously interacting and stuff. And I'm a huge Johnny fan. My oldest brother, who passed away in 2017, used to take me to concerts, and he was a huge fan of Johnny. I became a huge fan of Johnny and Edgar. So anyway, when Edgar called me in 2018 and said, I finally decided through talking to Monique that I want to make this record, I kind of won't really want to do it unless you want to do it. And it was really funny because I was actually with my family in New York, where I grew up, but live here in LA, of course. And we were walking out of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, having just taken a trip there to decompress after my brother had just recently died in 2017, in the late part of 2017. And I was overwhelmed when he called me, because I basically said, for me to do this would be to honor you, Johnny, and my brother. Oh. So there's kind of nothing more we need. I'm just all in. End of story. Like, great. let's just, I'm all in, and I happen to be in New York. So when I get back, and we're walking along the street too, and my wife is looking at me kind of like, hey, come on. Well, what's up? And I was like, I showed her Edgar, like, okay. She goes, all right. So, so that was lovely, because we just rolled up our sleeves and started to get into the songs and start to cast the songs, let the songs be the muse, so to speak.
Right. And the thought that now, knowing that you were both doing it in loving memory of each of your brothers, coming from that same pure place. How great. Yeah, what a great way to start the project, right?
Yeah, that's why for me it was like, oh, I'm all in, knowing that this was going to be cathartic for Edgar and important for him to really have the process be as important as the result. Because as a producer, in the end, people don't judge us by the process. We're only judged by the result. But on a record like this, it was all about the process for me with Edgar, like to make sure the process for him was fulfilling, so he would get out of it regardless of the result. And there were some amazing moments in that. Like, we were talking about, well, we need an elder bluesman. And at one point, Buddy Guy came up in conversation, but I don't know Buddy Guy, but I knew Bobby Rush. And Bobby Rush is one of the last. Buddy Guy and Bobby Rush are the last two connections to Muddy Waters, who Johnny was hugely not only influenced, but then went on to produce Muddy's best record, I think, of that ilk, Hardigan. So, which you hear Johnny, screaming in the background while they're cutting Mannish Boy, which is one of those greatest things. The song is almost like his screams on that song are almost as important as like just the track. So when Bobby Rush came in to cut Mojo Workin', which was my afterthought with Edgar, because when I looked over his song list, I said, you have no Muddy Waters on this song list. You got to have Muddy. And so there were things like that along the way that I brought a lot of my friends to the table that Edgar didn't know. And he fell in love with some of my guys like Phil X and, Tim Pierce. I brought Taylor Hawkins to the project. There were a lot. I brought, he wanted, Warren knew Johnny, but he didn't really have a way to get to Warren. So I brought Warren Haynes and Derek Trucks. And, so there were a lot of people that were people I'd worked with and were friends. So I was continually bringing like my brothers to brother Johnny, Doyle Bramhall Jr., so yeah, it was really beautiful process. And like when Bobby Rush was in the studio, Bobby was talking about when Johnny came to Chicago, that Bobby was the guy that took Johnny and brought him to Muddy, because Johnny didn't know him. So for Bobby to stand with Edgar in the studio and tell stories that Edgar had never heard about about his brother's life, those things were, really important for Edgar to just,
right.
hear
I mean,
that.
the whole thing sounds like it was, a 2-year-long music therapy session in a way, because when you're an artist like Edgar is, because he writes poetry and plays several instruments and sings and writes songs. I mean, he's an all-round Renaissance man as far as I'm concerned. But to go through then, working side, joined at the hip with you, who had also lost your brother, and then hearing these stories, I'm sure it went a long way to his comfort level as not just as an artist, but as a human being, to go through this process. And thank God he had you there to do it with him,
Yeah, there was a lot of healing, I think, for him. I think there were songs he didn't want to sing that, meant a lot to him to have on the record, but he didn't want to sing. And so casting those were important too. Like, particularly the track with Billy Gibbons and Taylor Hawkins, there's no way Edgar's madly in love with Monique. I mean, I'm still madly in love with my wife. We've been together over like close to 40 years, but married for 36. So I relate when Edgar says, this was a really important song for Johnny. I'm yours and I'm hers and I'm somebody else's too. That's how the song starts. And so Edgar's like, no way I'm going to sing that. And also that song was Brian Jones. When he died, that was the first song the Stones did, a really kind of Motley version at Hyde Park. You can find that on Hyde Park, because it's the first one with Mick Taylor. He's totally out of tune. He doesn't really know the song, but it's very emotional. So that song has been a very powerful song for Johnny, because that's, Johnny was, he was the ultimate, rock and roller. And so Edgar was like, there's no way I'm going to sing this, but we need to cast who's going to sing it. And and then I Guess I'll Go Away, another one of those songs where, it sounds like you're not sure what the song is about till you really dig in, but it's Johnny talking about, I guess I'll go away to rehab, or Stranger is when he is now sober and he's looking at the world and it's like everything's different. I'm a stranger in my own. And you can hear these songs almost like they're love songs, but they're not. And for Edgar, we cast those songs to match the intent and the vibe. And so for me,
I was wondering when we just rebuilt Edgar's website, as you know, and listened to the album while I was working on it, and I was wondering why he didn't sing everything, because he's got such an iconic voice. If you're an Edgar fan, you want to hear all Edgar all the time. But now that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And when we were sequencing, same with the Self-Destructive Blues, with Joe Bonamassa, which, Edgar has been telling the story about, when he asks Joe to look at the list and Joe says, this is the very first Johnny Winter song I ever learned. But then, Edgar doesn't really get into why he sang it, which is why he sang it. It's because Edgar didn't want to sing it. Lyrically, it was very important for Edgar to put his full heart and soul into the songs that he did sing. But the ones that he didn't sing are ones that he didn't feel for himself, that he it wasn't just, it would almost like be doing karaoke or something, or you know what I mean? So, and then with Bobby Rush, it was just an obvious one. Who's going to sing Mojo? Well, Bobby's going to come in and play harp and sing Mojo. That's why he's there, So, and then we got to a point in with the songs where I said, the one thing you don't have is the acoustic side of Johnny, which that was a really big part of Johnny, except most of the acoustic tracks, like Dallas, he's dissing on Dallas. Well, it's funny when Johnny's dissing on Dallas because, he talks about you get shit on your shoes in Dallas or something. There's a lyric in there in the chorus. But Edgar and I are, not really into like, well, we don't want to put a lyric like that on the song, on the record. And at the same time, we need this acoustic track. And throughout the whole process, I'd been talking to my dear friend Doyle Bramhall Jr., who he plays with Clapton, and I got, helped him get in Roger Waters' band way back, and he's been a really dear, close friend for years, and we wanted to be part of this record together. And so finally, Doyle was the one that kept saying, I don't want to just come in and play some guitar solo or something. I'd rather do something on this record that's meaningful. So eventually he and I went back and forth and decided that the Robert Johnson tune, When You Got a Good Friend, which Johnny did, it's on one of his earlier records. And that lyric is a beautiful lyric, which is like, it's one of those kind of, in some ways it's keep your enemies close and your friends closer. Yeah. But it's also just inherently a really solid, it's a solid blues tune and it's a solid lyric. And so Doyle and I went in, and that was the last track we cut, which was him playing a couple of three guitars and singing. And so, yeah,
the one that breaks my heart, because Edgar told me the story behind, where it came from, is The End of the Line. It just is. It's an instant classic, and I'm going to cry just thinking about it right now. So for those of you who haven't got Brother Johnny yet, do yourself a favor. Christmas is coming.
Since we're talking about Brother Johnny, there's no way you can not look at the lenticular album cover. For me, this is the coolest thing ever. I mean, that is like, I don't have, the only other one I have that I own is on her Satanic Majesty's request. The Stones. So
that is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, when Edgar sent me the prototype of the lenticular, I was like, if the label agrees to do that, that's going to be the coolest thing ever. So,
well, yes, God bless Bruce Quarto and Quarto Valley Records because that's not a cheap album to A, produce, and B, that the 180 gram vinyl and that cover is just stunning. It's absolutely
he's just the hugest fan. Bruce is just the. So I mean, this is one of those records where, the cherry on top is getting the nomination because the work has to be the reward. I mean, it just has to be for me these days. Yeah. Like, we don't know what's going to happen with almost any record you make these days. I don't make big pop records. I have in the past, but I don't make big pop records. So I have to, the records I do make with like Keb Mo and the artists that I continue to make records with, we make records because that we kind of have to. It's what we do.
It's in your DNA, right? It's like food. I was at a music conference once in San Diego speaking on a panel, and the gentleman who had he invented mp3.com, or he owned mp3.com, which was kind of a free for all. Anybody could post any old crap up there. And to prove a point, one of our friends in New York, Mike Maroney, created a 10-minute flatulence audio and posted it up there to prove nobody was doing any A&R or quality control. And I was about to be seated next to this person on a music panel. And just to be friendly and, open the conversation, I said, "Oh, hi, Michael. So what kind of music turns you on? What's your favorite kind of music?" And I swear to God, Ross, he looked at me and said, "I don't like music. I like money." For once in my life, I was speechless.
I was just about
My
to
husband
say
was like, "Get a picture of that. She's speechless." She's got
Someone's rendered her quiet.
And so, if you go into the music industry to be all about the money, you're in the wrong industry. You have
I mean, and there are a lot of people, and I don't take anything away from the narcissists that need to be adored, because that's, I think without people that are rock stars that, not everyone has to be a shoegazer. We need rock stars. So.
Shoegazer, I've never heard that before. I love it. Oh boy. Or if you're Australian, a flip-flop gazer.
I mean, Edgar is a rock star. There's no two ways about it. When he gets on stage, he's at home on stage. We were doing rehearsals for the record, a little bit of rehearsing, a couple of days to iron out some kinks. And when he's on a stage, he's legally blind, but you feel like he's going to fall off every time he gets to the edge. but he's the true rock star, man. He knows where he is. He knows exactly where he is. And I kept like thinking I'm going to have to like catch him when he falls off just the little stage at the rehearsal place. But, you know, I'm actually really disappointed that Ringo's tour didn't get to play here in LA. I love watching, you know, that whole show.
Yeah. That must have been a blast hanging with producing Ringo.
The whole record was, you know, there were so many moments that were the pinch me moments for me that you don't know it when you're doing it. It's weird. It's like, I saw someone just said something about how, you know, attention to detail Edgar is. He is. Yeah. Because he's legally blind, his perception is highly enhanced when it comes to his ears.
Of course.
You know, so it's one of those things where, you know, he isn't sometimes easy to work with. And you know, I work with people who are just downright mean. Edgar's never mean. It's not about that. It's just he wants it. He wants, when he's happy, it's like, I know that somehow, like, however we got there is like, so.
I understand that from, you know, we are his web company since 25 years, I guess. And working with somebody who, you were working in the music medium and his ears are finely tuned. We had to find a way to make him comfortable because he only looks at the web on an iPhone. He doesn't use, you know, browsers and desktops and things because he can hold the iPhone in a certain way that works for him. And he's very picky about every single pixel and what he wants, but he's super nice and pleasant. That there's never a tantrum or a rock star moment or anything, but he is an absolute perfectionist, and I admire that. I think that's great. If he's got the patience to get there, fine.
I would say he's a thorough gentleman in every way.
Absolutely.
And his use of words is astonishing.
Yes.
Because he asked me to proof some things for him, and I was just blown away reading them. I didn't realize the depth of thought that goes into everything that he does.
He's very, very thoughtful.
Yeah, and if I tear up, it's only because it's deep. But I lost my mom this year, and so after she passed, he wrote a poem that was remarkable. And then every anniversary, he really he appreciates the fact that Chris and I, he calls her Kristen, Kritsin, which is her name, but no one calls her Kristen except for her family. So he actually calls her Kristen, and he always, whenever we get off the phone, doesn't matter how many times we've talked, he always would say, you know, send my love to Kristen, you know. And so every anniversary, he sends me an anniversary poem too. So I have this collection of poems, particularly the one after my mom died, is very personal and very beautiful. You know, it's just, and I don't, you know, I make records with people when we're in the studio together, you know, honestly, just about every band I've ever worked with, give or take, when you're in the studio working, they're your best friends.
Yep.
And you may never talk to them again if you don't make another record. It's very odd, but I understand that. Like,
it's like a film crew.
Sorry?
Yeah. It's like a film crew. I used to produce, you know, commercials and television and films and stuff back in the 80s. And you would carry a bomb out of a building for each other during that period. But then, you know, 5 years go by and you never see them again.
Yeah, like the studio's a bunker or something. You know, it's like, and you're in this, you know, in this bunker together in this battle called Let's Get This Right. And so there are people that I've only made one record with, you know, and then there are people I've made multiple records with and continue to, like Keb Mo, who sometimes there's just chemistry, but like no matter what, that relationship, you know, when it does carry over, like the one I have with Keb Mo or Ziggy Marley or Edgar, it's very special because, you know, it's unique in the fact that, when we're working, almost no matter what project, it's always like that, like tight. But then in some projects afterwards, it's just over, you know, it's just, you know, and you don't talk. So I'll just, again, with guys like him or Keb Mo, or we'll just text and then, get on the phone and just, shoot the bull. And that's special for me. That's like what matters to me, like in the end, right.
Well, and that there are obviously, you can't just stay intimate friends with everybody you meet in your whole life, because your living room would be really full. But like our mutual friend, Nico Bolas, we've known him for 30 something years, nearly 40 years in my case. And we just, there are some people that you just latch onto and the chemistry works and you stay in touch and whatever. I mean, Keb Mo is an absolute genius, and I'm glad he's got you and he just keeps on going,
Yeah, Nico, I'm glad. Yeah, I mean, Nico's one of the most class act humans, and I think that's in the end. If there's anything to take away from any of the, from the outside looking in, everybody's life looks so great. Everyone's having, everyone's having the best meal. Everyone's having either a better meal or a better vacation or a better whatever. It's all from the outside looking in. It's always, particularly now with social media, it's an illusion, because when you get behind and inside, it's the ones that really matter. And, we live in a detached, world. And so you have to really keep your friends, know when you got the good ones that, really care.
I'd like to talk a little bit about your parents, let the folks know about what an amazing pair of humans you emanated from, because they're both in their own right are just incredible life stories, right? I mean, I know you recently lost your mom, but your dad too. I mean, what a story.
Yeah.
My mother, Connie Hogarth, spent her life as an activist. Her whole like being was to change
for the better, right?
She spent her life. What's that?
Change for the better, even if it was difficult for her. If she wanted, yeah.
Well, it depends on your politics, because I mean, honestly, some people's politics don't think that civil rights, gay rights, climate change, anti-war,
voting right,
all of the things that I honestly, consider me, and again, I don't want to offend anybody, but bottom line, I know where I stand. I stand firmly on the left if you're going to put me somewhere, but I just believe in kindness and love and being someone who thinks about others. And so I got that from particularly my mother, because she has a rap sheet. She's been arrested. I got arrested once behind a Rouse for public urination driving across, the country in a motorcycle. My mom has been arrested. My mom was arrested like about 50 times, all for like civil disobedience and climbing over the wall to go into a nuclear power plant to shut it down and stuff like that. So,
Connie was a pistol.
My mom, Connie was a pistol. Like when I was a kid during the Vietnam War and dealing with, worrying about older brothers going to get killed over in Vietnam, I would go down to Washington with her and some of my friends. She would get arrested and I'd have to call my dad, and say,
take me home.
Well,
Mommy's in jail again.
I was like, Mom got arrested again, and I just got tear gas trying to find the bus, and I'll be home whenever I'll get back up. And in today's world, they probably would have arrested my parents for child endangerment or something.
Yeah, but I think we've just come up with the name for your autobiography. I just got tear gassed, and I'm trying to find the bus.
Yeah, right. And my mom's best friend was Pete Seeger, so I was raised.
Oh, say no more.
Sorry?
Say no more.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was raised around Pete Seeger, and just this last weekend I was brought to tears because it was her birthday, and I was watching the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame where they put Elizabeth Cotton in the as a lifetime achievement or whatever. And I remember meeting her through my mom and Pete Seeger because she was working for the Seegers until they realized that they had like a genius that was like, you know, serving or cleaning house or whatever. And so Pete was like, you know, you're going to put down that and I'm going to put you on TV. So, so I was raised, you know, learning how to play every stringed instrument, banjo, fiddle, mandolin, all those. And that's my mom. My dad was the original illustrator of Tarzan. So he did the comic strip Tarzan for 30 years until he kind of got tired of being what we would call a session player. You know, because he, you know, he didn't write Tarzan, he didn't create Tarzan, but he created the image of Tarzan, and he's given the notoriety of creating the graphic novel because Tarzan was a novel, and then he had to move Tarzan through a page, so he created the graphic novel, the first graphic novel, and he's attributed, not that other people weren't doing it, but a term foreshortening, which is to, you know, draw something coming at you so you feel the energies, because he had to move Tarzan through the vines and have it come at you, and then you want to go and watch, you know, to look at the next page. So he did that, and then and he was a master educator, and he started in New York the School of Visual Arts. So my dad was the co-founder of the School of Visual Arts in New York, where I grew up, and I spent my childhood either, you know, hanging with Pete Seeger and that whole scene, or in the school waiting for him to finish teaching, and the smell of oil paint. So I love the smell of oil paint.
Yeah.
My son is an artist, and our house right now is filled with his paintings, and I love it because our house smells like oil paint, and it's in my DNA of being a kid walking into the School of Visual Arts to go. You know, I'd get out of school and my mom would be off getting arrested. And so I'd have to go hang out with my father until he finished teaching. And I would do my homework sitting in the School of Visual Arts. He got out of that in the 70s and came out here. And then he taught at Art Center in Pasadena. And he's one of they plant, you know, when he died, they planted this tree, which is now huge. He's been dead for 27 years. So, yeah, so that's my upbringing is learning, you know, about being kind, trying to be a good person. And then for my dad, the thing that he always tried to, you know, instill in me is think for yourself, you know, be someone who has, you know, he would say, I don't care what your thought is, make it original. Well, I don't know what an original thought is, but, you know, I try to understand that from, like, when it comes to working with an artist, that the critic and the creator are very dangerous to each other in the same time. So the creator is really important to honor the creator when it's creating. And after the creator is done creating, you have to be a powerful critic to be able to see what's not working. And so I've taken that kind of concept as a producer where, you know, if I ever say no, it'll shut down a room. If someone has a good idea and I just say no, it'll kill the vibe. But I have to learn how to get that idea out fast enough so it doesn't waste so much time that you're spending a fortune on what ends up being a bad idea.
Evolve into
you know what I'm saying?
It's a question of toleration, isn't it, to a degree? You know, to listen and to learn, even if you don't agree. It's touched my life so often. Learn when to keep quiet and listen and try and see the other fellow's point of view before you.
Except if that particular night is when my stepbrother Paul brought home the acetate demo of Hey Jude for us to hear for the very first time.
He got Jim and I out of bed because it was a long drive from London up to Liverpool in those days. There weren't all the motorways. And he came home probably about 2 o'clock in the morning, wakened us up and said, come downstairs. We've just finished this acetate. And he played us Hey Jude. And we listened intently. And Jim was saying, yeah, it's great, son. I love it. And he said, and what about you? I said, well, I like the song, but I can't stand all that repetition, all that na stuff at the end. Oops.
She said, people work hard for their money. They want to hear a whole song. If they're going to buy a 45,
They don't want to
old
listen
vinyl,
to sha na 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 na. Oh no,
72 bars of na na na.
And I
She said,
remember
it'll never fly.
Big
son.
party on one occasion. The room was full, and everybody was intent on Paul as ever. And they were talking about what makes a hit. And he just looked across the room, caught my eye, said, "Ask Anne, she knows."
Funny.
Whoops. So
That's
yeah, you get, and then after that, she learned when to listen.
Exactly,
shut the
keep the
hell
trap
up.
shut.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. That's the thing. It's I appreciate other people's opinions, but man, if I'm ruled by it, if I try to I'll always find evidence to support something I believe, and so if I'm looking for evidence to support something, that I can always find one way or another evidence to find anything that I might believe in, and that's not a good way to live, because I have to trust my instincts. So
Yes,
usually
true.
over time I've had to just either accept when I'm wrong and learn from that, but at the same time, sometimes in the process of making music, the mistakes are the art. And so if we try to get rid of all the mistakes and make music too perfect or whatever, which is what's happening these days, we get rid of the humanity. So sometimes I've just, no, you can't do that again. That's perfect. And it's like, no, it's not perfect. Well, that's the thing that makes it perfect, and getting into those kind of discussions with an artist where they want to do it again and again and again. And by the time you've done it so many times, it has no more of the thing that makes us feel something. So,
and I think discussions like this are really important to put out into the music fan world, simply because I think the term producer, when you think of a producer of eggs or cabbages or cars, you think it's a mechanical process. You go, you farm chickens, you pick up eggs, you put them in a box, you sell them. The word producer in the arts, I think, is a real misnomer, because I didn't understand until I became a producer of certain projects what all is involved. People tend to think of the word as mechanical, but there's so much more to it in music and film. You have to be mother, you have to be confessor, you have to be a therapist, you also have to be an engineer and a genius at your job. You have to know a flat note from a sharp note, you have to know timing. It's just, I think it's a real underserved role. I think there should be a better word than producer.
Well, my self-deprecating humor, and the website is really rosshogarth.com, but it's also Hoax, Hoax Productions. But I grew up as Hogarth, Hoagie, Hoax. You always have to, if you grow up in New York, you have to have a nickname. So, I was Hokey or whatever, came out California, become a producer. And my joke is that really, in some ways, production is a hoax. It's like, if you don't have a good artist and you don't have a good song, like now you have to be like kind of a magician, like a hoax. And so it was like just a self-deprecating kind of inside sort of joke to myself that it was HOAX. Unfortunately, over the last 5 or 6 years, the Orange Man took that name and kind of changed it for me. But I still like it.
Let's not go there. Let's not spoil a nice time.
I like that name still, because for me, the thing about being a producer, there's a certain amount of hoax going on. It's like you convince someone who's great that they're great, and you convince someone who's maybe not so great that they're great, and you get the best out of them in the end. And in the end, it's not really the producer. Like, my name might go on a record as the producer, but it's the artist's record, and I have to serve the artist in the end. And so it makes me chuckle, because I have a twisted sense of humor. So, Hoax or Hoax Productions is my little twisted sense of humor about that, because in the end, it's not about me. It's about, and that's why, the summation of making a record with like Edgar or someone that I love is when they're happy. It makes me happy when they're happy. And I might not be happy about certain things. I might not agree about certain choices, but if the artist says this is the way it's going to be, and I really feel like that's the way it needs to be for them, I'm not one of those guys that'll just hold myself and keep my feet nailed to the floor and like, pout about it or something. I
Right.
go, okay,
Go with the
you
flow. Go with it. How was it working back in, wind the clock back a little bit? I know you did stuff with Van Halen in the studio. And those, of course, were the crazy, cases of beer and whiskey stacked up the wall days. When God knows how anybody made great music, because everyone was out of their minds. But, well, I say everyone, but 90% of the business was out of their minds. How did you kind of come to, go with the flow between a genius like Eddie and then all the corporate suits and the label and then the creative process? That must have been quite the navigation.
Well, now just to clarify, I didn't work on records with Eddie when he was like that. I was around him, and it wasn't, but to just clarify, yeah. So they're like the Different Kind of Truth, which is the last record that Van Halen made, and then toured on, and then Eddie got ill, and came off the road, and then eventually for years was making sure that Wolfie was making music and all that. But the bottom line, Different Kind of Truth did take over the course of almost 10 years to make. Not like any record. It's not like we're working all the time or anything. It's just there was like Sammy, David Lee Roth, not David Lee Roth, David Lee Roth, and so again, navigating the Van Halen record was a lot about the things that we talk about, which is dealing with personalities. I mean, there's for me, one of the greatest musicians in the history of the world is Eddie Van Halen. He's, to me, a modern day Mozart or
without question,
Paganini, or anyone who does something. I just saw Jeff Beck, recently. There are people that do things like an instrument that
there's another one. Yeah,
they're aliens. They're an alien. Jimi Hendrix was an alien. Jeff Beck is an alien. Eddie was an alien. People are do something. So you got that, but then you have the personalities. You've got Alex, you got David Lee Roth, and then you have Wolf, who is Ed's son, and navigating all those personalities. So one of my greater accomplishments, I feel, on that record was just using personality skills, like things you learn over a course of a career to navigate other people's personalities. To again, you're not
like a musical psychoanalyst, really, like a therapist.
Yeah, there came a point in that record where Irving Azoff, was up at the studio 5150, and he pulled me aside and he was like, "Are we going to finish this record?" And I'm like, "Yes." That was, and it wasn't like that was the only answer. I could have said, "I don't think so," because there were a lot of tenuous times. There's no two there. All the stories are all well documented about how David and Eddie, and that's why they broke up, and that's why Sammy, and there's a lot to say about all of that, and it's really not my place. But bottom line, what I was there for was when Ed was clear and healthy, or getting healthy, having been at his bottom. Yeah, and his bottom is well documented, where you see a guy who's playing crazy and his teeth are the whole thing that we all can go find those pictures on the internet. But the guy that I know in my heart is a guy who would kiss me like Ed was a lover. Ed was just a lover. He was just a lover. Now, Ed, when he was loaded, wasn't so good to be around. But Ed, when he wasn't, and that's the Ed that I had, fortunately. And he was a guy who would kiss you when he saw you and kiss you when you left. And I mean, there's one really funny story, because I went out and did the live sound on the two tours, because that's where I come from, is the road, and way back. And so we're at Madison Square Garden, and Live Nation takes people through the venue. They pay extra money to go at sound check through the venue, and they get They get a bag of stuff and whatever. So the Live Nation VIPs are walking, and we just finished sound check, and Ed's coming down off the stage ramp, and I'm coming from the house, and I go to he wants to know how the sound check was. but every time we see each other, it's always like he gives me a kiss. So he comes in for the kiss, and I don't know which way I moved. And next thing I know, Ed and I are macking with each other, and so like now I'm in this like embrace macking with Ed, and the whole Live Nation VIP crew are like looking like, who's this guy kissing Ed? Like, this is freaking us out.
Did they have TMZ in at that time?
Yeah, was TMZ capturing it all? Don't tell Valerie and don't tell Kristen.
Yeah, it was one of those things where it's like reminded me of that movie with trains, planes, and automobiles, where it's like, those aren't pillows, It's,
Yeah.
it's like, but it was one of those records that was there were a lot of difficult moments. There were a lot of amazing moments. And in the end, you have something that there it is. Okay, you did it, finished. And so
well, I think that is part of the, and now we produce websites, right? Because this never ending social media posting and advertising and whatever, it's like a raffle ticket with social media. You have to be present to win. You have to be there. Otherwise you're not top of mind. But that's why I still love building websites to this day, because it's a process and there's something tangible at the end of it where you can go, okay, there it is, so-and-so.com. And, you and I remember the journey we went on to produce your new website, and it was great fun. And I got to know you, and, hopefully we can do projects together musically. But I think, again, when you look at the arts and you look at music and film and all of the late nights and, the introduction on your website, the 90 million fader moves and 80,000 pots of coffee.
That's you, baby. That was you. Just and you'll appreciate this, because I don't know how to. I'm not good at like keeping my own scorecard. I like when someone says, "Hey, that's a great record. That sounds amazing," or whatever, and that makes me feel good. But I don't get to wear a T-shirt that says "I'm so humble." Like, it doesn't work that way. No. If you say, "Man, that's really great to," it was really cool to work with you, and you're a humble dude or whatever, that makes me feel good. But I don't get to say either "I'm the greatest" or "I'm so humble." So I mean. I said to Ruth, I go, I don't know what the front page of this website's supposed to say. It doesn't want to be like, "Hi, welcome to Roz Hogarth," or whatever. It's like, that's not me, but I don't know what the heck it's supposed to say. So she goes, "All right, let me think about it." And she came back with the first draft of what's on the front page of the website, which just made me laugh, because it was like, so many thousand fader moves and so many pots of coffee and so many endless nights, or whatever it was, that I tidied it up at that point. So it was saying exactly what I wanted to say, but it basically was the same, give or take a couple of words here and there. And it made me laugh. It was like, and then I had to run it by my wife and go, does this sound like me? And she goes, "Yeah, that's really great." And I said, "Well, because Ruth wrote it, I didn't."
There's a recommendation.
Well, thank you. But I was just trying to convey in the third person all of the stuff that you go through, the process that you have to go through as a producer to get to the end result. And all of those rock stars, late night stories, fader moves, remixes, try it again, do it again, whoops, all of that stuff. And my task as a writer for that was just, and having got to know you over the last few months, was just, how do you encapsulate that in kind of, don't bore us, get to the chorus. I'm a lyricist as well. I've written a bunch of songs, and usually I start with the title, because that's what's going to sell. And so, but that's what I'm talking about, the production process. At least in our industry, there may be a lot of late nights and pots of coffee and, coming home at dawn and all of that stuff that you don't get with the 9 to 5, that frankly feel like a pain in the ass when you're doing them. But at the end of the day, you have a lenticular vinyl or a CD or a .com or something to show for it. And so I think for kids going into the arts, you can't do it for the money. You have to do it for the process and hopefully a good outcome. Some will be great outcomes and some will be blah, but you just have to do it. Keep going. Don't you agree?
I'm going to tell one more story. I know that we're running out of time because
it's fine.
if people are still listening, I mean,
absolutely.
Send me an envelope and I'll pay you whatever it is that, you know, I'll pay you for sticking around because
no, this is great.
I mean,
we've got that on tape. Remember?
Yeah, I know. I didn't actually say that. I said you guys would pay. But anyway, so
behave. Behave.
Okay. I can't. See, I'm not going to get away with anything with your mother there. Come on.
Not a lot, no.
No.
We're done for, Ruth.
We're screwed. Absolutely.
Yeah, totally. So anyway,
so your funny story. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, so we're, this goes back to Edgar's project because it's the most recent one, and I could tell stories. We all could tell stories. I got stories till the cows come home, obviously, and you put that in there too because we all have stories. You can't do this as many years as I've done it without stories. So, we're in the studio. I've made, I don't know, I can't count how many records I made with Steve Lukather, Luke Daddy, as I call him Luke Daddy. And Luke Daddy and I have 4 decades of making records together, all sorts of sessions. There was a point in time that I loved just being a session, I was an engineer that we did on any given day. I would have Luke and Greg Fillinganes, the greatest players in the history of music coming through, and we'd just be. So Luke and I have a lot of history, and his son Trev is I'm like a big brother to Trev, and there's just family with Luke. So being in the studio is really easy, and Luke is fast. And Edgar brought him in to play, and that was an Edgar casting. I want Luke to play on Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo. So, we were working on the guitar parts, which were more like Hendrixy and stuff for that. But when it came to the solo, we just gave Luke the solo section, and he burned 3 solos, and they're all Luke is again one of the greatest guitar players ever.
Another alien.
Yeah. And so he burns through. So it's funny you use that word. So hold on to that word for a second. So he burns through 3 solos, and they're all great Luke solos, but they're. I know Luke, and I know what we want for this song intuitively, and I know we don't have it, but if you just keep throwing solos at Luke, he's going to get frustrated because he's going to be like, I just played the greatest shit. Because Luke is also, there's a cockiness to Luke. He just is. If you know Luke, he's just cocky, and it's good cocky. And he's funny as hell.
Yeah.
So
might not want his vocabulary around your priest or your nun, but.
No, he's a scatologist. That's for sure. And you guys can look up the words who out there in internet land.
Naughty word.
Yeah, he's a full scatologist. But anyway, so I paused because Edgar, there's points in making this record where Edgar had to trust me. He knew that if I said we're going to pause, or just if I paused, that we're pausing. So Edgar would have just had Luke play because that's Edgar's thing. That's his process. But I know Luke, so I paused, and we had to have a hang, as what we call it, a hang, because Luke loves to hang. That's what the 80s rock was about, hanging in the studio. Because these guys can get this. A song that's 5 minutes long only takes 5 minutes to record if you play it once. So, like a guy like Luke, if he's going to play a solo that's 40 seconds long, and he does 3, that's 3 minutes. But the hang is
8 hours
or whatever, right? Take hours. So I know that Luke needs the hang because he had come in and Edgar didn't have the hang in his. Edgar's not a hang guy. He doesn't come from that school of thought. No. Edgar's very focused, meticulous. Oof. So I knew it's time to hang. So I just stopped rolling, and we got into the hang, and we started to shoot the shit. And then I said to Luke, I go, tell Edgar about your favorite TV show. Because I know Luke's favorite TV show is Ancient Aliens, which is a whack TV show. It's a crazy whack show, but it's about these aliens that have come from, back in history that are here. And it's just this wacky show. And Luke loves Ancient Aliens. So he starts telling Edgar all about Ancient Aliens. Because so I say to him, tell Edgar about your favorite TV show. And he goes, you know my favorite TV show. I go, I know it. I know, of course I know it's Ancient Aliens, dude. Come on, tell Edgar. So he tells Edgar all about Ancient Aliens. So now he's thinking in this whack Ancient Aliens mindset. And I go to Luke, hey man, why don't we just do another solo without even saying, why don't you channel Ancient Aliens? Because he's going to do it anyway, because he's in this sort of crazy out there mindset. So I roll the tape, and when you listen to the solo on Hoochie Coo, it's out there. He goes to like a 13 add 9 note over. Wow. Like when you listen to that solo, if you go to that solo, when we get off the phone and listen to that solo, it's Luke channeling Ancient Aliens because it's freaking whack. It's it's like a note that you would only play if your mind is like in that that place. It's just out there. Yeah. So he plays that solo, and Edgar looks at me like, "What was that?" And
that was a hoax.
And I was like, let's hear that one back. And Luke just looks, he's got, I'd never play that ever again. I don't even know what that's, he goes, you can't use that. I'm like, can't use that? That's the solo, dude. That is the one. And that's the solo. It's out there.
That is wild. That is wild. Yeah. Sammy's just saying, Sammy Starshine Myers, who, God love her, is the lady that runs all of Edgar's social media. She does a fantastic job. She's down in Atlanta, and she's like, gotta go listen to that solo again. I would suggest everybody do that too.
Yep.
So
yeah. God. So it's those kinds of things when you're in the studio that you don't know. Like none of us are like I'm not like the highly qualified unlicensed psychic, but.
Are you sure?
But there are times when intuitively that it's not time to record right now. Like it's time to do a hang. It's time to get someone's mind off of something, because sometimes the more a musician thinks, the more they think, and the more they think, it doesn't get better. And you have to pause long enough. And like Ange said, part of this gig, the biggest part is learning to listen, because if I learn to listen and I listen to learn, then that's, that's kind of, what happens when we're not listening is we're missing it. So that's, So that's my little 2 cents for the day.
Fantastic. Everybody's saying what a great show this was. Thank you so much for all the stories and the insight. And I think what I'm happy about today is that I think you've given people such a great insight into what the word producer really means, because I still think it's a misunderstood word, position, level. You have to be a sorcerer, a chef. You have to know when they're hungry, when to order lunch, when to bring up their favorite TV show, and all of the above.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's like being a mother in a way.
Yeah.
Sorry?
It's a bit like being a mother in a way. Or better still, a mother-in-law.
Uh-huh.
Well, you guys obviously have something very special going, and I'm thank you so much for not only inviting me, but wearing the like matching teal green. It's just awesome.
If you go to his website, you'll see it.
Teal and steel. It's our new duo name.
You guys are so great. I thank you so much for having me. I mean, we could gab. I mean, obviously, gabbing is fun. Work is good, and it's a balance of both. But it's just lovely to hang and, as we say.
And I'm especially thankful and cognizant of being thankful this week because it's Thanksgiving. But I'm thankful that you reached out to me on your project during the Edgar project, and I'm very thankful that we were able to work together and give you a new website, and I've gained a new friend, and hopefully I'll see you on Friday.
And I'm thankful I've got his credit card number.
There you go.
So there you go.
So I'm going to read you. I have a friend of mine that sends me, because you just mentioned, grateful, gratitude, Thanksgiving. Yeah. It's nice to have gratitude on a daily basis, not just once a year.
Oh,
I have
yes.
a friend of mine who sends me gratitude quotes every day because
Yeah.
gratitude often gets my head out of my rear. You know, like when, you know, if I want to hear a popping sound of my head coming out of my rear, it's usually because of gratitude. So this quote came to me on Saturday. I've kept it around because I was feeling sad when I woke up on Saturday going, this is
Yeah.
my mom's birthday. And, you know, I won't be calling her, hugging her today. And I was just feeling a little sad. And then this showed up and it, I'm going to read it because it's really kind of perfect. It goes, if it took 13.8 billion years for the moment in front of you to get there, and it took 13.8 billion years for you to end up in front of that moment, every moment is indeed a match made in heaven. Nobody else is standing there experiencing exactly what you're experiencing. Truth is, no one ever did, and no one ever will. That exact moment will never be here again. You are being given a unique show that took billions of years to create. It's right in front of you, and you're complaining about it. Hopefully you have more appreciation for it right now. The moment in front of you is special. Might want to practice appreciating it and notice the effect that it might have on your life.
Wow.
Yeah, but absolutely.
That is beyond deep.
Yeah.
We're both blonde, but we both understood it.
Blonde. Listen, I'm wearing a wig and she needs her roots doing.
No, it takes me hours to dye my roots black. I've got to get a little toothbrush and everything. It's terrible.
Well, you're right in front of that moment and hopefully not complaining about it.
Oh, no, not at all.
Another day above ground.
Yeah.
That's the good
Well,
thing.
you two, thank you so much
Okay.
for a lovely hour.
Thank you.
It flew by, and we love you lots, and love to Chris, and happy Thanksgiving. And I will hopefully see you Friday. And everybody, please reach out and go and read Ross's amazing resume and discography and stuff at rosshogarth.com or hoaxproductions.com. They will magically appear in the same place, thanks to technology. And we love you lots, and thanks for spending the time. And
yes, thank you.
Rock on, Ross, I would say.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
All right, kids.
God bless. Bye-bye.
Bless you
Bye-bye.
back.